Williams, quarterback, Southern California.
What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to another edition of the Willis Twin Towers Chicago Bears podcast. It's good to see you guys in here tonight. Tough loss last week, but we got a really awesome guest tonight for you guys. We'll go over a variety of different topics, a lot of things to get into. We'll probably even talk a little bit about the past things that have gone on. But right before I switch it over to Tim to introduce our guest, just a quick reminder, guys, to please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can follow us all here on X or Twitter at I am at _ Jeff Willis. Tim is at Tim Willis 24, and our executive producer Aldo is at Barroom Network. And so I'll switch it over to my partner here in crime, Tim, to introduce our guest tonight. We'll get it going here for you.
Hope you guys have had a good week this week. I apologize in advance. I've been a little bit under the weather, but I'm going to barrel through this thing, and we're going to talk some awesome Bears football here. But before I do, I want to welcome our guest tonight. You guys know him. He's the Chicago Bears beat reporter for the Bigs. He's the co-host of the Herb and 2 podcast. You guys have probably also see him in cameos on CHGO. Please welcome our guy, Herb Howard. What's going on, Herb?
Tim, Jeff, what's happening? How y'all feeling, man? Thanks for having me.
Good. We appreciate you being here. Herb's been on the show before. You're one of our only returning guests, Herb, so we appreciate you coming back on.
Hey.
Super excited to talk with you, especially with everything that's going on now. Last time we talked, it was right after the Justin Fields trade. So there's a lot of stuff to discuss tonight. And super happy to have you. But Herb, I want to actually get us started here. So being in the building, there's been some conflicting reports about who is leading this coaching search. So from someone who's in the building like yourself, what's your sense in this case of who the lead man is?
Well, I believe it's going to be a collaborative effort between Ryan and Kevin Warren. I think there was some confusion about who had final say on it, but I believe Kevin Warren when he says that if it comes to a point where Ryan wants this guy, Kevin wants that guy, that they will defer to who Ryan Poles wants to be the head coach. I was never convinced that, Coach Eberflus was Ryan's choice. I think they did it backwards, as the Bears do so many things backwards in terms of getting – here are your finalists before you hire the GM. Like, is that really my choice? So I think he'll get his chance to finally make his first head coaching choice, in my opinion. And I think they'll collaborate on it, and hopefully they can agree on who that person is. And then ultimately they'll still have to run it by George McCaskey. And, this is the guy we've decided on, and hopefully he doesn't veto it for whatever reason. But I think Kevin and Ryan will collaborate, and I think if it comes down to it, it'll be Ryan's choice. But either way, they'll still have to run it by George at the end of the day. So nobody.
Well, Jeff, before I get back to you and pass it over, I kind of want to have a follow-up question with that, Herb. The press conference with Poles and Warren, certainly in my opinion, seemed a little awkward. Poles obviously looked like emotionally distraught. Part of that I'm sure was the fact that he had to fire his buddy Flus. But to me, I got this sense that he seemed a little irritated with Warren taking the lead, or so it seemed, in my opinion, in that press conference, and maybe in the overall coaching search even. But what are your thoughts on that? And do you think there could be a power struggle or some animosity in the building at some point?
No, I definitely felt like that was as tamed, if you will, that we've seen Ryan Poles be. He kind of looked like, that kid in the principal's office after his dad's been called up to the school. And so he's sitting next there to him like, oh, I know I messed up. I made a few mistakes. And he's like, that was the kind of vibe I got from Ryan on that particular day. I don't really think there's a power struggle. I think for the most part, from what I've seen from them, both at press conferences and throughout the building and, on the road, down at the owners' meetings, all those types of things, they seem to work pretty well together. I mean, I don't think that there's a power struggle. I think it's pretty clear what the hierarchy is. And for the most part, Kevin Warren seems intent on letting Ryan do his job. And so I think for the most part it works. I just think that, like you said, Ryan just got done firing Matt Eberflus, who I do believe he's very fond of and grew pretty close with. But then also just acknowledging that you made a mistake, right? And you've made a few of them here now, and some of those things are starting to kind of come home to roost on you, and that can't be a good position. I would have been honestly taken aback and probably a little put off if he were, in this jovial mood and his normal, hey, everything's fine self. Everything's not fine. You're firing your coach in the middle of the season, a season in which, you had playoff aspirations and you thought you had done a pretty good job of putting together this roster and giving them a chance to compete for the playoffs, and that didn't happen. And so if he were up there jovial and all that, I would have been a little turned off by it, to be honest. So I thought what you saw was a little bit of raw emotion, a little bit of just what he was feeling at the time, and that's probably what he should be feeling at the time.
So that kind of brings me back a little bit to the question that Tim had asked. Mm-hmm. When they first had that press conference with Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles after Eberflus had been fired, they were asked about the coaching search, and I believe it was Ryan Poles that said they were looking for a, quote, leader of men. So I have been a critic of that in the past couple of weeks of that phrase, the way they said that. I mean, to me, that's a pretty obvious characteristic that a coach would have to have. They need to be able to lead their team, to be able to go to battle, and they need to be respected, obviously. So I think this is my personal opinion, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on it. I feel like it was more their way of saying they're looking for a certain type of leader of men, such as Mike Vrabel, like a man who's going to be, a disciplinarian type who ain't going to take no shit if you know what I mean, kind of way. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I think they were looking to. That's kind of what they meant, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But they I don't know if they just don't want to say that out loud or if that was kind of their way of saying that. But I just kind of was curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, they got to get this thing right. And you got to have a guy. And listen, it's cool if you like your coach. Like that would be great. But you don't have to. You know what I mean? You don't have to. We don't have to be friends, right? I'm the coach. You're the player. Here's what the standard is. Here's what the accountability is going to be, and we can keep it moving, right? At the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. And so, would you like to like your coach? Sure. Do I think that most of Mike Tomlin's players like him? Probably. Does he give a damn if they don't? No. Like that's not what it's about. It's not why we are here. And so, I think at the end of the day, they have to bring in a coach that is going to set the standard for practice habits, performance, but also just set the tone for like who we are and what we're going to be. That thing you keep hearing about Dan Campbell, right? What is it that he does so well? Nobody's ever like, oh, this X's and O's thing. This just like, no, he just sets the tone for who they are and what they are going to be. And the players have gotten on board with that. And so I think when you talk about leader of men, that's a lot of different ways to interpret that. But I think at the end of the day, it's kind of leaning into what you're saying, just about, setting those standards and not like Mike Tomlin always, no excuses, no explanations, right? We're not here for all of that, right? This is what needs to get done. We either did it or we didn't do it. Tried to do it, almost did it. That's not what we're here for. And I think that, we've heard, for the most part, players like Matt Nagy until they didn't, right? For the most part, players like Flus until they didn't. I don't think anybody ever really liked Mark Trestman, but, and I don't think John Fox even tried to make anybody like him. But it doesn't matter if we like each other or not. Do we work well together? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? That's all that matters.
Yeah, just winning games, right? You need to win games.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, that it's interesting, certainly, and what direction they're going to go. But I also want to kind of lean on this Thomas Brown thing, Herb. So in your opinion, what do you think Thomas Brown needs to do over the next 4 games to cement himself as the permanent head coach?
I don't think there's anything he can do to cement himself as the permanent head coach. I think they absolutely have to go out there and perform their due diligence. They have to bring in everybody that they think is worthy of the job and give them a fair opportunity to earn it. I think Thomas Brown should be a part of that, process. But I think if he's able to continue to show some improvement on the offense. And I know they took a big step back last week, but his first 3 weeks as OC, they did show improvement. And so they can get back on that path. They continue to get, Caleb Williams, keep his trajectory pointed in the right direction. Then I think that gives him a chance. But also, how does he resonate? How does his message resonate with the rest of the team? How is his game management, which we didn't really get an opportunity to see on Sunday because they got their ass kicked so bad, right? So you don't really get to see how he thinks or how he reacts in tight situations, late game, 2-minute, those types of things you don't really know. Challenges, timeouts, none of that was ever really a factor in the game against San Fran. And so you want to look at those things going forward and just see how the players respond to him. What do the players have to say about him on their exit interviews? Do they want him back or not? And I think that shouldn't be the deciding factor, but it should factor into your decision. And so I think those are the things he needs to do. Just continue the offense, continue to progress with Caleb, and get your message across to where the defense, the special teams are also hearing what you're saying, but it's also translating to their performance out on the field. There were a couple things that happened in that game on Sunday that was like, that doesn't seem to jive with the type of person that Coach Brown seems to be, right? When you're down multiple scores and you got Rome catching this touchdown and dancing and all that, what are we dancing for? Like, what is that about, right? You get Jonathan Owens get a late game pick when the game's already been decided. What are we doing that for? Like, what are we running to the end zone? Like, the sideline's right there. Step off and go sit down. Nice pick. Good job. But, those types of things, it seems a little tone deaf when you're kind of celebrating those types of things. And I know it's hard to score a touchdown in the NFL. It's hard to get an interception. They both made nice plays, but it's just not the time to celebrate. There's nothing to be happy about right now, so go sit down. Those types of things when you talk about leader of men, Mike Tomlin wouldn't stand for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are y'all doing? So I think those are the types of things that you're going to want to see from him going forward.
I totally agree with that.
Yes.
I just think, and it's kind of interesting. It brings me to another point that's kind of similar to that. Obviously, Tim made a mention at the beginning of the show that you're on CHU every once in a while, and they have that new series with Cole Kmet, the 85. And I was watching that the other day, and Cole was asked about basically what contributed to them getting beat so badly this past weekend. And his answer in a nutshell, and this is not a quote by any stretch, but was basically that there has just been so many changes. He didn't want to make a bunch of excuses, but there have been so many changes, obviously with the new head coach now, at the start of the week, that he just felt it was like just too much to overcome in essence. So my question for you then is, do you think there's enough time left with 4 weeks in this season for Thomas Brown to kind of cement himself and give himself a real opportunity to win the job? Because they're going to need to see real progress, you would think, from this team going forward. And they certainly can't take a step back like they did last week. You've got to see some real growth going forward.
Yeah, I think he was put in a very, very tough position, right? It's just a tough position to walk into. Not only are you in the midst of this long losing streak and everybody knows the season is over, even if you had a head coach with some job security going forward, it'd be hard to get the guys motivated and up to perform at their highest level and do all the right things when they know the season's over. But you're talking about changing head coaches in the middle of that. You're talking about having changed coordinators. It's a lot to deal with and to keep guys, motivated to perform at the absolute best. And so I just think there was a tough situation for him to walk into. Obviously, he's a competitor. Obviously, he's wanted to be a head coach in the National Football League for a long time. So when the opportunity presents itself to be an interim head coach, you aren't going to say no. Nobody would. But you also got to look around and say, well, is this such a difficult situation that it may actually hinder my progress toward my ultimate goal of being a head coach? And that's a possibility. That's a possibility. But you also look and you say, well, we've got Minnesota and Detroit and Green Bay again. And if we can perform well enough, then maybe I set myself up to be in pretty good shape going forward, whether that's here or somewhere else. And the Bears played well against all three of those teams, had an opportunity to beat all three of those teams, and it came down to coaching decisions. And if he can show himself to be better in that area than his predecessor, then maybe they win some of those games. Maybe they win a couple of those games, and you're like, oh, okay, this guy is capable of doing that job. I just hope they're giving him a legitimate opportunity for this 5-week audition to see if he can be the head coach. Because if they're not seriously considering him to be, one of the leading candidates for their head coaching position, then they made a mistake by elevating him to interim head coach, right? If you aren't going to consider him to be that, then he doesn't need this audition. He'd been better served continuing to develop the offense, continuing to develop Caleb, because the offense took a huge step back. And I don't know how much of a correlation there was between that and him taking on all these added responsibilities, but it was my first mind to say make.
Right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. For real. No, you're good. Yeah, that's just what it is. Like, I was thinking elevate, Coach Hightower, the special teams coordinator, to interim head coach. One, because you can allow Thomas Brown to stay where he is, but two, because the special teams coordinators are generally the most qualified to take over in such a situation, because they're the only coach on the staff who's dealt with the entirety of the roster, offense, defense, first team, second team, third team. As injuries start to add up, they know the depth chart and the players and their given skill sets better than anybody else. It wouldn't surprise me if Coach Brown has never, ever had a conversation with the guy like Noah Sewell or, like Jalen Jones. Like, what am I like? You know what I mean? So those are things to consider. But if you are trying to evaluate him to see if he's going to be your next head coach, then it makes some sense there.
Yeah, I totally agree.
This is just purely my opinion here, Herb, but I almost feel like those 2 blocked field goals had a lot to do with, I kind of feel like that kind of took away from Richard Hightower being in consideration for being an interim head coach, because, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. And when you just had it happen the week before, and then it immediately happens the very next week after you talked about how much you worked on that in practice and you felt like you corrected that, and then it shows back up again. I believe that's a little unfair, considering, that the special teams has been very good since Richard Hightower has been there.
Yeah.
And, this is the first time we've really seen a big repeat mistake like that. But I don't know, I kind of feel like that may have had something to do with the fact that they didn't consider him for it, just because you had an opportunity here to correct something and you weren't able to correct it. Can we trust you to do that with an entire team, not just one unit?
Yeah, no, I feel that. And I don't know that they would have been strongly considering Coach Hightower to be their head coach, but just, can he be a placeholder in this time? Can he manage the roster and make some decisions? The kicks, I can certainly see how that could be a factor. I think, like you said, I think that'd be unfair. Not only considering his track record here, but also how those situations were botched, specifically the game winner against Green Bay. Like, we can go into that, but everybody understands that there was plenty of time to gain more yards and make that a more makeable field goal. Not that the Cairo can't hit it from 46 or 48 or whatever it was, but just make it easier. Improve the trajectory of the kick so that it doesn't become so susceptible to getting blocked. But also the second one, Braxton Jones just didn't do anything in that next game to stop them from blocking that kick. And they take him out. Darnell Wright comes in and he holds up 2 guys, making sure that the guy who blocked it first was Tillery, like, make sure he couldn't even get off the ground. Like, no, you won't jump, right? So just, at some point, it's coaching for sure, but at some point it's about execution. It's about guys winning their one-on-ones and having some pride in what they're doing. And, in those moments, you got to have it.
I wanted to go into something else too, and I'm sure Jeff's got another question for you, but you mentioned Braxton Jones, and I want to piggyback off that for a second, because look, all things considered, being a 5th round pick, that's been a steal. It's rare to find a 5th round pick at left tackle that can jump in there from the start of training camp, more or less, and become the starter. And he's done he's been serviceable for the most part at that spot. And for the most part, he's also been pretty healthy, a couple dings here and there, but for the most part, fairly healthy. But to me, I feel like we've kind of hit our ceiling with him. He hasn't really progressed, and this is now year 3. We haven't seen that jump. He's kind of just, it does seem like he's hit that ceiling, and we're not seeing any progression now. So I guess my question would be, do you view Karan Amagaji as a possible permanent solution there, or do you think this is something we absolutely have to address in free agency or the draft?
So if Caleb is the most important commodity in the franchise, I'm not putting his blind side to 3rd round pick from Yale, right? And when you talk about Braxton and his ceiling, I think he's pretty much reached his ceiling too. He may get a little better, he may get a little stronger, he may get a little bit more able to deal with the bull rush. But for the most part, I think we know who he is. He's got some athleticism. He can get out and lead. We saw him do that a few weeks ago when DeAndre Swift had like the 40-yard touchdown run up the left side. Braxton certainly can do some things that you like. But I think that when you draft a tackle, somebody comes in and plays left tackle for you for 4 years out of Southern Utah in the 5th round, I think you got your money's worth on that, right? Now can you get an elite player? I think that his ceiling was always going to be somewhere around where Charles Leno's ceiling was, and that's cool, right? They're both durable.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because that is literally the person that I always think of is, he never missed games, Charles Leno, but they similarly, like, they serviceable, but not, to that elite level. I agree. I'm sorry to cut you off, Herb, but that I 100% think of that all the time.
Man. That's just what I think his ceiling is. And so, if you want more than that, you're going to have to go get more than that. And, these tackles at the elite level, they don't fall off trees. You're either going to get one in the top 5 or you're going to go pay somebody. That's really where they come from. There aren't many of those players that come from other places other than top 5, top 10, and then A-list free agency. That's pretty much where you get those types of players from at that position. And so the Bears are in a good position to be able to do that. They've got, 3 picks in the top 55, and they've got ample salary cap space, and they can move around and do some things to secure one of those players. And if you want to keep Braxton around, that's cool. If you don't, that's cool. Could he be, this great find? Maybe, right? But we've been around this team for a long time. We've seen us think that we've found something that nobody else saw, right? Yeah. So they're like, we had a first round grade on him, but he got injured and he was out of Yale. Well, who rushing the passer in the Ivy League is rushing the passer in the NFL? Right. That's just a huge jump to make. And to go into next season expecting him to hold that down without bringing in anybody else, nah. If he beats out somebody else, then great. But I wouldn't bank on that happening. That's too big of a jump for me.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
So there's actually something I want to ask you about here, Herb. There's a question that you asked in one of the recent pressers with Caleb, asking him about avoiding sacks. Aldo has the video here. We're going to play it. And then I want to ask you a question about it.
Before the regular season, that the area you want to improve most was in your blitz recognition.
Yep.
Identifying and picking it up, finding the answers. To my eye, you continue to progress throughout the regular season. But in some of those key game situations, 2-minute, third down, hit the field goal range, there still tends to be some of the sacks. And I know it's not all you, it's play calling, it's blocking, it's route running. But on the ones where you've said, though, I've got to get rid of the ball, what specifically needs to happen? I know they're all different. What specifically needs to happen so that those sacks don't continue to pop up?
Yeah. Like you said, they're all different, and they all have different play calls and motions, all of that, different situations, clocks winding down, clock stop, all these different things, no timeouts. The most important part of that is me being able in that moment, right in that moment, to be able to hone in on the right moment to go be and make a play and go make that play. So I think that's it's a quick switch that I have to have, and I've said this since college that I'm still developing that throughout the whole drive, may have made a couple plays, may have done this and that, and now we're in that little segment right at the end of the game, overtime, all these different situations, and being able to, okay, this is the right play. Okay, this is the, maybe this guy broke free, but, getting us 3 yards and staying in field goal range, putting on the right hash and things like that. So it's just a quick switch in the moment, being able to snap from, making plays to, okay, this is where we need to be on the field. This is the situation. This is that. And that's going to come here real soon, and still learning and building that. And these situations that have happened this year, I know we've messed up on a bunch of them, myself included, taking sacks versus the last time we played. The Vikings taking a sack in OT, a stupid sack. but we've messed up in multiple situations, including me. And so being able to learn from whether it was, necessarily me taking a sack or, mismanagement or all these different things, plays and things like that, being able to take all of that in and learn it, for the end of this year and the rest of this year and this football season and, further in my career. So being able to snap out of it and right in that moment, right in the situation, be able to make the right play at the right time is the next point.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to make a quick note that you always ask such detailed, concise, and just really good, just great questions that they'll draw out an answer every time. That's really kind of what you're looking for. You might not get what you want, but you're going to get a good answer out of it. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate that, man. I receive
how
that.
you do that. So, with my own eye, I agree with you. I'm seeing the same kind of improvements with him. So in regards to his response to that, what do you see that makes you think that he is on the right track? Obviously, there's some inconsistencies here. Last week he held on the ball a little bit, but in past weeks we've seen him getting rid of the ball, faster and, hitting targets quicker. So just kind of what are your thoughts on that? What are you seeing? And do you think that he is impervious to poor coaching in essence?
I think that he's, he's had some bad coaching, and some of that's kind of landed on him, right, in certain situations. And you go back to how they mismanaged the clock on Thanksgiving, and some people were like, well, the kid just got to bang a timeout. It's like, wait.
Yeah.
The kid is a rookie, okay? He's in a late game situation on the road against the best team in your division, maybe the best team in your conference, and he's trying to get everybody to the line of scrimmage and get this playoff. He's hearing what Thomas Brown is saying. He's trying to communicate that. He's doing all these things. And would a veteran quarterback, would Tom Brady, would Drew Brees get everybody lined up by, 17 seconds? Probably, right? Or if they couldn't, would they bang the timeout? Sure they would. But you're the coach on the sideline. Help this kid out. You know what I mean? Just help him out. It's very, very simple. You want him to get up to the line of scrimmage and preserve that timeout. Sure you do. And there's 30 whatever seconds left it was. There should be enough time to get up to the line of scrimmage and call this play. See if we can throw the ball out there. Then we can bang the timeout. But if you're watching this thing, you get to 20 seconds, 19, it's like, whoa, he's not going to get it done. Timeout, right? Everybody watching it realized just where they were in the process. This ball was not going to be snapped in time for you all to do something else thereafter. Call the timeout. Let the kid learn from it, right? Help him out. And so what I'm most impressed with Caleb in terms of those situations is that he understands it. He understands when he's made a mistake. He understands when it's been mismanaged, right? He said that in his answer too. There's some mismanagement. Yeah, we see that too, right? And then there's different types of sacks. You get immediate A-gap pressure, you're dead. I don't care who you are, right? But specifically the ones where he does have time and he still holds on to the ball, those are very concerning to me. And it's concerning to me because since it started to happen, he's acknowledged that it's the wrong thing to do. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, when are we going to change the behavior, right? Like it's like somebody keeps doing you wrong and they see like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. No, just change the behavior. You don't have to keep apologizing to me. You don't have to keep saying my bad. Just change the behavior. And I want him specifically in those key game situations. That's why I asked him 2-minute, third down, edge of field goal range. That's when you got to know. Now, if you're trying to scramble around, you're trying to make a play between the 40s and the second quarter and 8 minutes left, you end up taking whatever. I'm not pissed at that. You're a playmaker. You're trying to make a play. But in those key situations, you have to know. You got to break the huddle. Like, okay, we cannot take a sack here. Cannot take a sack here. Cannot take a sack here. And it doesn't seem like he's reminding himself of that in those moments. And again, that could just go back to how many things are going through his mind in those moments. There's a lot that he's dealing with. New coordinator, new voices, new system entirely, like as far as a rookie, right? NFL talent trying to read the defenses. They're trying to trick you. They're doing it. Like there's all going through his mind. But also he has to say, hey, Caleb, we cannot take a sack here. We cannot, no matter what happens. Throw the ball to the bench if you want to. Throw it to the first row if you need to. You can't take a sack here. Bail out, do whatever you got to do, but do not take a sack here. Throw it at the running back's feet. Do whatever you got to do. Do not take a sack here. And so, until he gets in one of those key situations and he's back there patting it and maybe nobody's open or maybe the defense tricked him or whatever, and he's like, okay, let me find a way out of here. Let me bail out. Let me throw it away and give myself another chance on the next down. That's going to be an issue to me. I'll be very, very interested to see, if the Bears find themselves in a key situation again, how he handles that, because it's been a problem, and so far he hasn't adjusted to it.
Well, to be fair, the coaches, like you said, really haven't adjusted to it either. We'll see if Thomas Brown can, but man, I know he's gone ultimately, and this is kind of like beating a dead horse here, but it's like, how on earth as a head coach, and it just seemed to me like Flus never had the ability to process information quickly on the sidelines. No. Maybe on the defensive side of the ball, but for whatever reason, as far as the entirety of the game went, he just could never seem to figure it out. And it's like, they would say the communication was bad. Obviously, he mismanaged time. How many times did we see that? And it was just one of those things where clearly he's just not able to process those things. And it's funny, as soon as Thomas Brown takes over, they talk about how good the communication was. But I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Operation just was never smooth, right?
Yeah.
Operation on anything. When to call a timeout. What plays to challenge and not challenge. That should be a very, very simple thing, right?
And I want to know who's giving him the information to send these to challenge these things. Some of these are like so clearly obvious that it's not a good challenge. Even from the TV copy, you can see that. So it's like, how do you not? Who's up in your booth telling you this? That's what I want to know.
I wish I could recall the exact challenge, but I don't really remember the games. They kind of get jumbled up a little bit. But on the road, Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham sit right behind us, right behind the Bears beat. And there was a challenge early in the game that didn't really make sense. And then there was another challenge later that made even less sense. And we're like, what is he doing? Like, why are you challenging that? And so as we're looking through this, like, no, the flag comes down. And Ryan Poles goes, did he drop that flag? And I'm like, he sure did, just instinctively. I'm just like, he sure did. Because we were all just blown. Like, what are you doing? And Ryan's like, well, who's in the booth? Which is
he asked that?
Yeah, just in his mind, just kind of like subconscious, like who's in the booth? I'm sure he knows. I hope he knows, right? But it's just like, what is going on?
That was my first thought when you said that. Yeah,
it's just like, what? How is this happening, right? If Tim, you the head coach, and it's like, Herb, you in the booth, and I don't call plays. I'm not the coordinator. All you do is watch for replay situations. That's all you do. Mm-hmm. Did we catch that? Did we not catch that? Was it a fumble? Was it not? Was he in bounds? Was he out of bounds? And if we all we get to see in the press box is obviously the field, but then we see the TV copy. And in some stadiums, you have the stadium copy that's going on, which runs a little bit faster. But depending on if you're on the road, depending on if you're going to win or lose the challenge, they hold that back. You know what I mean? So all you can see is the TV copy. So by the time the TV copy comes on, if we see it, who the hell in the booth didn't see it?
Right.
And I just, hey, Tim, no catch, no challenge, whatever it is, it doesn't take that much. You shouldn't be losing so many of those. And so just the operation on that, operation on timeouts, operation on end of game situations. You go back to the block field goal with Green Bay. I asked Caleb in the locker room a few days later, maybe that following Wednesday. I asked him, I said, hey, you talked about how, Thomas Brown was communicating much faster to you. Did y'all have a play? Did he already send you a play in? After that last play to Keenan or whatever it was, did he already send you a play in before y'all decided to kill the clock and kick the field goal? Okay, no, we had a play. He had sent it in. So it's where's the communication here?
Yeah.
Where's the communication here where your OC is sending in the play and then the head coach is like, no. Where's the communication when you got your quarterback and your kicker on the field at the same time? Where's the communication when it's these things, it's not making sense. It's just not making sense. And so those are type of things that you just can't have at this level. It's about operation. That's got to be smooth. Now, whether or not we can execute, whether or not the ball bounces your way, whatever, that happens sometimes. But the operation being sloppy, unacceptable.
And one more thing on this. I don't want to beat a dead horse too much here, but one more thing on that. The other part of this with the challenge flags is it has to be clear, concise evidence to overturn the call that they've already made. So if you think there's a chance that the play is going to stand, why would you even challenge it? I'm sorry, but that's like basic football knowledge to me. And we're talking about, and it's not just Flus, obviously, it's whoever's in the booth as well. You have a staff that can't seem to figure that out. And that's almost best to put somebody that's totally unbiased up in the booth, because obviously they have like too much faith too much at stake with the Bears to, I don't know. It's just unbelievable to me. It's crazy. Sorry. Excuse me.
I was just going to ask her. So it's kind of interesting to me too, because the most concerning thing to me about the whole thing is, they made all these mistakes. The one thing that was one of the few things that Flus did take accountability for, though, was when that play happened where the offense was staying on the field and the special teams was going out there at the same time. He did mention that was his mistake of not communicating that correctly with Hightower, I believe, in his presser, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, for the most part, that's still an issue, but for the most part, still here, there's so many things that he was basically doubling down on, like the communications as you guys were just talking about, from the video booth to him, and how the process was good. He liked the process. You mentioned it multiple times, things such as that, there were so many different things that he was doubling down on the decision-making. The play before the Hail Mary, where they gave up the 12, 15 yards or whatever it was, that basically gave them enough distance to make that throw. So shorten the field, I should say. So to me, it's just like there's so many things in that realm where he was just basically saying, no, we like what we did there. We don't think there was a mistake there, when they clearly were, to where it's like, that's what bothered me the most, I think.
Yeah. Well, that, or he would put the blame on Caleb or somebody else, like with the timeout call in Detroit. How are you going to put that on the rookie quarterback? It's unbelievable.
You can't do that. It's just, you can't talk accountability when you aren't going to go out there and say, I screwed up. You just can't, right? Your job on Sunday is to put the players in the best position possible to win. And when you don't do that, you just got to acknowledge that. Like, I felt a different way. I was wrong. You were wrong. And we'll live with it or we won't, but you were wrong. And I think like some of it is just in the moment, and some of it is just, this is basic stuff, right? So how do we not know if we're going for it on fourth down? And it's like, that decision has to be made before third down, right? Number one, you help your OC with the play call. He knows I've got 2 downs to get this 6 yards or whatever it is, right? That can change what I call. And then 2, you don't look crazy when you got your coordinator sending the kicking team out there and you still got the up. Like, that should be already decided. It shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't look so sloppy. We shouldn't be disoriented. You shouldn't have DJ Moore out there like, man, we were all like that trying to figure out what's going on. Nobody knew what was happening. And it's like, that's just a terrible, terrible look. And I like Flus, man. I've gotten to have some conversations with him off the record, and I think he's a good guy. But at the end of the day, you lost your right to continue to be the head coach of the Bears just by making poor decisions. At the end of the day, it's a results-based business. Yes. And time again, whether you talk about those 4 losses this year that were egregious, you talk about losing the 12-point lead in Detroit last year, you talk about losing a 20-point lead at home to a terrible Denver team last year. Like, this, it's just too much. It's just too much. At some point, it just becomes too much, and the Bears had to make the decision that they did.
Yeah, and that Denver game was really bothersome to me too, because they'd started off the season, it was 0-3 or 0-4 before that game?
Yeah.
0-3, because of the Chiefs game. So, I mean, they really needed to bounce back there, and they had a lead, and they should have gotten it done, and they just blew it
and
again.
Denver had given up 70 the week before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, literally 70. Like, it's just like, come on. So I came into that game, I was like, listen, if they don't win this game, we can scrap all of this right now. Like, and so when they went up, it's like, okay, at least they're gonna take care of business against a bad team. And then you lose the lead. It's like, wait a minute. I would not have been surprised at all if Ryan Poles had walked into that post-game press conference. He came through that door. I was looking at the door like, is Ryan Poles going to come through that door, or is Matt Eberflus coming through that door? Because this is crazy. Like, we can be done with this right now. I mean, they came into that season with expectations of improvement. They thought they could beat the Packers week 1. Not. Packers came in here and did what the Packers always do. Then you go to Tampa and look terrible against Tampa. And then, of course, you went to Kansas City and got your ass kicked. But then you come home to Denver and let them come back from down 20. Like, nah. Now, to his credit, he navigated some tumultuous waters last year. He got the defense going once he took over as play caller. And I was of the mind that he earned his job back, right? And give him another chance to see if he can keep this thing rolling. Then you come back and you have 4 more of those type losses, and it's just like, no, they probably should have did this at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. I don't want to keep talking too much on Eberflus. It's just crazy that he is still in our minds and he's gone, but it's just, it was a lot. There was just a lot to take in from that. But Herb, I want to get back into this coaching search a little bit real quick before we got some questions in the chat we want to get to here soon. But
most definitely,
I do want to ask you, do you have a short list of head coaching candidates you'd be interested in? And if you do, who are those and why do you like them?
None different than the hot names that have been thrown around, right? I'm down for, seeing what Vrabel's talking about, just as one of those leaders of men that we were talking about earlier, Jeff, like experienced guy, defensive guy. Like, I'm cool with that, but
he's
I'm
growing
also
on
cool.
me too.
Yeah. I'm good with Ben Johnson. We can see that he can orchestrate an offense. He's a good, not only play designer, but he's a good play caller. And those are two different things, right? And you can be good at one and not necessarily good at the other.
Yep.
And he seems to be good at both. Now, is he that leader of men? Can he command the respect of the entire team? We have no idea, right? That's always the thing with these hot coordinators. Like, well, I know you can call an offense or a defense. I don't know that you can be this general manager of the football team, right, so to speak. And so, that remains to be seen with all those hot coordinators. What you're talking about up in Buffalo or Slowick down in Houston, Brian Flores, I'm high on him as well. I'd be down for that. So my short list is the same as pretty much everybody else's. I would have interviewed Belichick if he wasn't down in Chapel Hill already.
Yes.
I would.
I think you'd have to interview him, period, just to at least pick his brain, if nothing else.
Yeah. I would have been 100% down for that. So I think they, anybody they believe in, they want to talk to, go ahead and talk to them and see what you think about them. But when you make that decision, make it on their ability as a coach and what you think they can do. What's their plan for Caleb? How do they, present themselves and their own plan for the team, and not so much on, I like this guy, or I used to work with this guy, or I don't care if you like this guy. I just told you I don't care if the players like the guy. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to all be friends here. We have to win football games. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, this NFL coaching staffs, there's so many coaches, right? Even go down to the high school level when I coached, it was like 15 of it. Like, it's like, I don't like all 15 of y'all. I don't have to. You know what I mean? We could be cool, and when we win on Friday nights, and we'll go out and have some beers, whatever, but we don't got to be friends. Do your damn job, right? Yep. And I think smart people, great leaders, I should say, surround themselves with smart people. You let them go to work, and you look like a genius. That's all this thing has to be about. The problem, though, is, right, when you talk about are they going to get it right, and, confidence level or your belief in them to get this right, to me, it's very minimal in terms of my confidence that they'll get this right.
Me too.
And the first reason is it's a very hard job. There's just not a lot of people who are very good at it in any given time. It's 32 jobs. There aren't 32 people that are very good at it. Yes. That's proof positive by the fact that there's constant turnover every year. And so I look around the league and I say, well, okay, maybe 12 of these guys are really good at this. 12 of these guys are really good head coaches. And then I say there's probably another 12 or so that are okay, and they're just hanging on, and maybe the organization isn't great, but they're keeping guys in contention and they're trying. And then the bottom third is always on the hot seat. It's always this turnover, and it's like, well, either you're going to get fired this offseason or middle of next season or next offseason. There just aren't 32 dudes who do this very well, 32 women that do this very well. And so I think that's the first problem. The second problem is that it's the Bears doing it, and they've never done it well. You know what I mean? And so, like, not only is it hard to do for anybody, but then you add in the fact that y'all the Bears. Y'all do it all. Y'all do everything backwards in the wrong way. And so, if you start, I would start at like 33% chance of this being a success. And by success, I mean this head coach is going to come in here and he's going to be here for the next 10 to 15 years. That's the type of sustainability. That's the type of continuity you're looking for, right? I would say standard for any team is at best 33% that ever happens. And then you factor in the fact they're the Bears, and so I don't feel more than 25% that they're going to get this thing right. It's a hard thing to do, and they haven't shown a propensity to do it at a high level anyway.
Well, and it's funny. It's really funny you mentioned that too, because the last good coach we've had here was Lovie Smith, and he wasn't even the Bears' first choice. They wanted Nick Saban. They even had an agreement with Nick Saban, but they didn't come to terms because of he wanted control of the roster. But that's really funny that you even say that. I mean, that's just been the issue year after year after year. But ultimately, I look at it like this. If you want, I think the only possibility they have at finding the right guy is to give Ryan Poles full autonomy over who he wants to bring in. Don't try to throw some coaches his way and say, well, we really like these guys. We think you should like them too. Or we're leaning heavily towards this guy. Or bring in some consultant that hasn't been active in the NFL in 10 years plus.
Please don't Ernie Accorsi me. Please
the fact that they even are considering that again is mind-boggling to me.
Please don't do
You
that.
have to let the football guy that you brought in specifically for this here make his own decision. It's in his contract. This is what you brought him in for. Let him make the decision. You can maybe point some guys out and say, hey, here's a guy we'd like to line up for you to interview. But take a step back and don't say, hey, we like this guy. We think you should hire him. Just say, hey, these are some guys we like. We think you should take a look at and let us know what you think. But not, we really think you should lean in this direction. Let him make his own decision here. Because ultimately, I believe Flus was thrown on him. Maybe not. Yeah. But we really like these three guys. Pick the one that you like the most, kind of thing.
Finalists before you got there. That's not cool.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I may have one of 15 guys in my brain. You tell me I got to pick one of these three dudes? It's like, that's not my choice, man. That's you know what I mean? That's not my choice. So, I mean, you can certainly make suggestions and say, hey, I really like this guy. All I'm saying is give him an interview. That's well within your purview, right? Interview him, right?
Yep.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If you don't like him, cool. I'm not going to force you to hire him, but I am going to say interview him. And that's cool. But other than that, just let him do his thing. Let him do his thing. You're gonna extend him or fire him based on the results. Excuse me. He's already hitched his wagon to Caleb Williams, right? Now give him a chance to surround him with everything to make that work, right? Because you can't look back on it and say, oh, well, that was the wrong path. Right? I was very public about which path I wanted them to take. I don't take any of that back. I wanted to trade that pick, get the haul, get the offensive linemen that were available, get Marvin Harrison Jr. and whatever else came back with 2 or 3 extra first-round picks. Very, very clear about that. I thought that was the fastest path to the Super Bowl for the Bears. I don't necessarily feel differently today. But that has nothing to do with Caleb. He's still a really good quarterback that can be elite at this level if you surround him with all the things that he needs to succeed, right? So it's not just one. I was doing an interview earlier with Kevin Powell from WGN, and Kevin's like, "Herb, we found our quarterback." I'm like, "That's true. We have found our quarterback. There's no doubt about it. Caleb is everything that we hoped he would be, and so was Justin Herbert for the Chargers. It just doesn't matter, right? Like Justin Herbert has been clearly the quarterback for that team, and it hasn't translated to any wins until you bring the right coach in, the right culture, and surround him with things that will help him reach his maximum potential. That will be the case for Caleb and any other quarterback. He's not that damn good. He can't do this thing by himself. If he could do it by himself, he would have gotten to the line of scrimmage. He would have banged the timeout. He would have threw a touchdown. Like, you know what I mean? It's not that simple. So you got to surround him with things that allow him to reach his ceiling And if he's able to do that, then Ryan Poles can say, okay, this actually worked. But give him an opportunity to pick the right head coach that he thinks can get Caleb to that position, but also manage the whole team and keep everybody on one accord.
There was a question that Aldo asked earlier in the chat, and it was a similar question that I had for you, Herb. So there was a story that was written that's been talked about throughout Twitter today. A lot of chirping about it. I personally did not read the full article myself, but I've obviously heard about what's been said in there. Yeah. It was an article written by Dan Weeder for the Chicago Tribune. He's talking about a lot of different topics in regards to Flus getting fired and the situation with Ryan Poles. And I was just curious, for one, Aldo wanted to know if it's common for media members to normally comment on each other's work, and if you had any thoughts on it, if you guys do that.
So I didn't read Dan's column today, so I can't speak to it in any great detail. I have respected Dan's work for a long time, so I will read it. If you all can sum up what he said, because I really didn't read it. I don't know what he said. But I like Dan's work, and I'm very interested in what he actually did say. But I didn't read it. So he put 6,000 words about Poles, basically saying what?
There was a handful of topics. One, I believe they discussed Nate Davis. Like I said, I didn't read the whole thing.
Huge miss and an oversight. Vrabel told you we like players that practice.
Yeah.
Why would you go sign them? Why would you go guarantee him $20 million? His coach just told you he doesn't practice. And then he gets here, lo and behold, the motherfucker doesn't practice. And it's like, well, his coach just told you that. You know what I mean? So I thought that was a miss. I thought Chase Claypool, miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the Steelers were desperate to get rid of him.
That's all you should have ever needed to know.
Yes.
The Steelers do not cast off good young talent for no reason.
Right.
You look at the kid, he's 6'3", 6'4", he's 220, 230, he's 4'4", 4'5". It's like, oh, that's a guy I want to throw the ball to, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Tomlin said, get out. Well, the Steelers are a much better run organization than the Bears have been.
Yep.
So if they said get out, right? Did the same thing a couple years ago with Artie Burns. The Steelers drafted him in the first or second round to play corner and then said, get out.
Yeah.
Bears like, we got it. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Patriots, another organization. Bill Belichick told, what was the receiver?
My gosh, I could tell you.
No, I'm sorry. I should know this off the top of my head right now.
It'll come to us in a second.
Starts with an N. N'Keal Harry.
Yes.
N'Keal
Harry. Bill Belichick said, hey, we drafted him in the first round. I think like a high pick. Get out. Right?
Yeah.
And the Bears like, oh, we'll fix him. No, y'all won't. If the Steelers, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots said no to any of these players, the Bears have no business saying yes to him. And you sent them a second-round pick, Mike Tomlin has to love seeing the Bears' name pop up on his caller ID. Like, oh, here we go again. So those were two glaring mistakes. Ain't no doubt about it. Ain't no way around it, right? Then you get to the offensive line with Ryan Poles and his inability to build it or unwillingness or whatever to build that thing first. No doubt. Came into this season with holes at offensive line, questions at offensive line. He said it was the most depth we've had. A lot of times when you talk about having a lot of depth, what that means to me is you don't have top-end talent, right? I remember a few years ago, the Bears came to camp, and they had so much depth at wide receiver. It was like 14 wide receivers, and you couldn't tell who the number 2 receiver was behind Darnell Mooney, right? It's like, well, that's a problem. That's not depth. That's a lack of top-end talent, right?
Yep.
And so you don't know from 2 to 14 who the number 2 guy is. That's not depth. That's the lack of top-end talent. And so, you know, that's a different situation. Like you come into the season this year and you look at wide receiver and say, oh, the Bears don't have that much depth. We got top-end talent. Doesn't matter, right? Tyler Scott hasn't played since week whatever, right?
Just getting ready to say that. He hasn't even had to play.
Yeah, and I like him. I think he's got some potential. I think he can eventually help. I know he dropped some balls in some situations or whatever, but I still like his skill set. He hasn't even been on the field, right? So that idea of all this depth, a lot of times that's really just mask a lack of top-end talent. So, He's got Chase Claypool, he's got Nate Davis, and he's got how he's ignored or missed at O-line. Cool. All that's on his jacket. No way around it. Whatever his role was in hiring Shane Waldron to be your OC, when you also interviewed Thomas Brown for the same position amongst many others, and somehow you settled on this dude, like he was awkward from the very first time we met him. It was like, I don't really like that. I remember Jackson Smith and Jigba sat down with Hogue and the guys at CSGO at the Super Bowl, and he was like, y'all hired him? Good luck, right? And y'all got in the room with that dude, and were convinced that he would be the guy that y'all would hand over y'all's newborn baby to.
Yep.
Okay. You know what I mean? So all of that on his jacket, no doubt. My thing with Ryan Poles is, and this is why I'm still a believer in him, I think he's built a pretty good roster. And I don't know how people can go back. I don't know how people can go back. And it's kind of like revisionist history, right? Because before the season, I was hearing anything from 9 to 12 wins from people. And I don't know how you predict this winning season, 9, 10, 11 wins, when you look at the roster and say, oh, this is a terrible roster, right? And so because it didn't work out, and because you lost this Hail Mary and these other games that were bad decisions or bad execution, whatever, you can't then go back and say, well, that's the GM's fault. Either you thought this was a good roster in May or you didn't. And most people thought it was a good roster. Did it have holes on either side of the line? Question marks? No doubt. But most people thought this was a roster that could give you a winning record. And so if you thought they had a winning record, you can't come back to me later when they have a losing record and say, oh, the roster's terrible. You didn't think that. So don't go putting that on him now. I already said earlier, I don't think he hired Matt Eberflus. And so if you want to count that as a strike on his record, cool. But I don't think he had the autonomy to go through that process and find his head coach. And so, you start to look at his record. And he's 14-33 or whatever it is. For the first year, he tore it down to the studs on purpose. They were going to lose 13, 14 games no matter what that year. They tore it down to the studs on purpose so that they could rebuild. In the second year, you look at trying to make some improvement, which they did. And then we just talked about a couple games that they gave away that should have been more wins. That's 9 wins last year. And then this year you come into it thinking that they would win again at least 9 games. And so, you can't just put all of that on him. And so I still believe he's earned the right to say, okay, let me find the next head coach. Let me see if we can get this thing right. And if he doesn't, cool. But I'm not ready to get rid of Ryan Poles just yet. I know a lot of people have gone back and they've looked at, offensive linemen that have performed well, going back to his first draft. And they're like, oh, he took Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. Well, I like Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. Jaquan, they're really good football players. And I know Jaquan's got the concussions, and that's a terrible thing. And I don't know what that's going to look like for him. I'm really worried about the kid, to be honest with you. But is he a good player? Absolutely, he's a good player. And if he's healthy and able to go, both of those guys should be in your secondary for 10 years. So I'm not mad at those picks. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, talk about Karan Amagaji at number in the 3rd round out of Yale. Where's the spot for him? Unless they give him the left tackle spot going into the next season without drafting another one or signing a vet. I don't know what that looks like, because that's crazy. I mean, we've seen the Bears do that type of stuff before where they think they're the smartest team in the room. And they're like, hey, we'll take Adam Shaheen out of Ashland. He's in the 2nd round. It's like what? Who? Where's Ashland? Sometimes they try to outsmart everybody. We know something they don't. No, you don't. Just like you don't know anything about.
I was just going to say Shea McClellan. Yeah.
Come on now. Like, we've been doing this for a long time. We can go back to Michael Haynes and we can do this for a while. Like, so they always think that. It's like, no, that's not going to work any more than you think you know something about Chase Claypool that Mike Tomlin doesn't. That's not true. Right? You think you know something about N'Keal Harry that Bill Belichick doesn't. It's not true. So sometimes they do that type of stuff. But other than that, my general belief on Ryan Poles is that he's done a good job. I still think he's a net positive, and he'll get his chance to pick his head coach. And if that works out, then maybe he'll be around for 10 years or so, 15 years or so. If not, we'll be doing this thing again in a couple of years.
So basically, there's a few commenters in here who were giving us a general rundown of that article. They basically said that. So, by the way, guys, just go read the article. But in essence, there was it was a summary of the mistakes that Poles has made. I'm sure he went into detail about some of that stuff, and then basically whether he deserves to keep his job or not, why he should deserve to keep his job. So yeah, go ahead and read that article, guys. Dan Weeder, Chicago Tribune. I'm gonna have to look at that myself because it's been talked about a lot today, but. We're about out of time here, Herb. But there's a few questions in here in the chat. If you're willing to get to them, I want to ask you.
Yeah,
so
sure.
J2K's got a really good question here. I appreciate it. So J2K here has a really good question. He wants to know, Herb, Poles has made some great draft picks, but the disregard for building the O-line has been obvious. How much blame do you put on Poles for his record, and do you extend or release him this offseason?
Yeah, for sure. So, I obviously just said I would. I don't know. I mean, extend him, whatever. But I think he deserves more time. And some of the record is on him. You can't absolve him of it. No, but some of that is just coaching. Like once I've given you all the groceries, and if you mess it up in the kitchen, what I'm supposed to do about that? You know what I mean? Like what am I supposed to do about that? So some of those losses for this year and at least 2 last year, I don't put anywhere near Ryan Poles. I just don't. Now, if you want to say, well, he brought Flus in, cool. I personally don't think that was exactly the case, and so I don't put that on him. The O-line, no excusing it. No excusing the J2K. There ain't no way around it. He has ignored the O-line, and it's particularly curious because you're an O-lineman, sir. You are, and so is Ian Cunningham, your assistant GM. Like what? How are y'all not evaluating O-linemen and bringing them in? How was it the plan to have Ryan Bates be the starting center? I ain't never seen him do it before.
Because he hadn't.
Like, I know y'all been wanting him for a while, and that's cool, and he's got some traits, and that's beautiful, right? But he also got an arthritic shoulder. Then now he can't lift his arm above it, and so it's like you ignore some things. I don't know how that was the plan, but you say, okay, him and Coleman Shelton are going to come in and compete. Then Ryan Bates spends some time at right guard because you had already messed up on Nate Davis, and he was out again, right? For whatever reason. It's like he's gone again. It's like, okay, last year his mom passed away. You have a great level of empathy and understanding for anybody losing their mom in any situation. Then you come back this summer, it's like, wait, did his mom die again? Like, did she pass away again? Like, what is happening? So Ryan Bates spends that time in right guard, and then by the time he's ready to get back into the competition for center, and Nate Davis is back, now Ryan Bates is down. And so you ended up really with Coleman Shelton playing center all season by default. Shout out to him for maybe he'll make it through 17 games, knock on wood. But that wasn't your plan. Ryan Poles told us as much at the owners' meeting. He was like, no, we think Ryan Bates is going to be the guy. Okay, cool. No problem. And so now you're looking at Darnell Wright, Nate Davis, Bates, Tevin, Braxton. Didn't really work out like that, right? But nobody would have bet $1 to a dime that Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins were going to play 17 games. Like it's just tough to do. And I really like Tevin Jenkins. I think when he's healthy, he's one of the better guards in the league. But when he's healthy is a massive question that you can't really ignore. So, I don't. He just hasn't put the time and I won't even say he hasn't put the resources there. I mean, you signed Nate Davis to the contract. You use a 3rd round pick on Amagaji. Like, I don't know, but he's going to have to. You spend a top 10 pick on Darnell Wright. So these are legitimate resources. You talk about 3 years, $30 million. You talk about a top 10 pick. You talk about a 3rd round pick. Like, it's not that you aren't doing this. You sign a couple free agents or make trades. But you got to figure, like, you got to be better at evaluating this offensive line situation, especially as an offensive lineman. So, no way around that, J2K. I'm with you 100%.
Well, and real quick to piggyback off that, Herb, at what point do you start putting a little bit of blame on Chris Morgan? And I understand that he has a lot of respect in the league, and a lot of coaches really look at him like he's a very good coach in the NFL, at least for offensive linemen. But, we're not seeing a lot of development. Even Darnell Wright, who has been very good. I don't want to take anything away from him because he's been solid. But I really haven't seen a huge jump that we were kind of hoping for in year 2, and nobody else has seemed to really elevate their game under Chris Morgan. And that was the one guy they said, oh, he's staying. No matter who the OC is, Chris Morgan's staying along.
Yeah. Now he just kind of feels like an O-line coach. Like he's like all the O-line coaches I've ever been around. Like he just kind of feels like that. You know what I mean? Just this kind of chill dude that goes off and like, I don't know. But you're right. I mean, specifically about Darnell, right? I mean, you talk about number 9 pick. That's a guy you're expecting to be an elite perennial Pro Bowl performer.
Yeah. Yep.
And last year you could say, okay, maybe he's on that trajectory. And then this year it's like,
started
I don't know
slow.
if he's on that trajectory. Please don't tell me he's just a guy. Like, don't like a solid piece at right tackle, but you don't spend the number 9 pick for solid. It's not what you do. I asked,
especially for a right tackle.
No, it's not what you do.
Well, to be fair to him, he's been a lot better the last few weeks. He's looked pretty good the last few weeks. I don't think he's given up a sack in like 3 weeks.
Nah, but you just expect him to develop into that, next Penei Sewell. Like you that's what you're expecting when you invest at that position, right tackle that high. So, hopefully he can continue to, stay on the path that he's been on the past few weeks, like you said, and he'll be fine. But as far as Chris Morgan, I mean, I don't know how much of it, other than Darnell Wright, I don't know what we're looking at in terms of his ability to raise the level of these players. Again, you talk about Braxton. I think they've gotten the most they can get out of the 5th round guy from Southern Utah. I really do. Tevin Jenkins, really good when he's healthy, just can't stay healthy. That's not his coach's fault.
Nope.
Whatever y'all try to do at center, it's not like y'all had some elite center, right? And then y'all misevaluated Nate Davis just from a person, right? Never mind whatever he's able to do from a person, he wasn't going to be dependable for you. And so I can't put that on Simo either, right? So, I mean, does he deserve some blame? Sure, that's his group. That's his group. But who amongst that group did you expect to elevate beyond what we've seen? I didn't expect much more from Braxton. Tevin's good when he's healthy. I don't know what they were doing at center, to be honest with you. And Nate Davis's previous coach told you he won't practice. And that's what you got too. I don't know what Simo's supposed to do about that. He's got to continue to get more and more out of Darnell Wright, though.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think they've put anywhere near enough resources in the O-line in the first place. But, I mean, the one, like you said, the one top 10 pick in Darnell Wright, but nothing else that was really a significant resource. So we got 2 more if you want to take 2 more here that I want to get to. So here's one from Vizo Joe. This is a really good question. He wants to know, do you think the players have checked out for the season? Lots of drops, missed blocks, missed tackles, even from like Montez Sweat, Cole Kmet, Jalen Johnson, and so forth. What are your thoughts?
Before you go, Herb, I was going to ask you real quick about Montez. I feel like he's not healthy. I feel like he's definitely not at 100% this year.
100%. He's been hurt all year long. You don't lead 2 teams in sacks last year and then forget how to do it this year, right?
Right.
He's been banged up, and the issue with him being banged up is that you don't get that multiplier effect down the line. And then when you lose Billings, now you got a real big problem. That's gonna that leads to some of the leaks that you see in the run game. So you got Billings, TJ Edwards, and Jaquan Brisker. That's why the Bears are so good at stopping the run. And 2 of them are gone. And so, like, now you start to see people running all over them. And then there were some leaks earlier, but there weren't these consistent 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yard gains. There was just, stuff, boom, 40 out the back door. Stuff, boom, 30 out the front door. It's like, well, that's a problem. But now you're just starting to see it every snap. Like, we can't stop it. And Billings and Jaquan, as much as I thought that Elijah Hicks stepped in and performed admirably, as much as I think Jonathan Owens has performed admirably, there's a reason that Jaquan Brisker was your starter, right? And we know what Billings meant to the run game. And so you start to see some of that pop up. But to answer your question, I don't think that these players quit. I don't really get that from them. They've had ample opportunities to quit. I mean, you talk about Cole Kmet, Jalen Johnson. They ain't played on a good team yet. They could have quit every year.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I don't really see that from them. There was one play against the 49ers, and I don't think Jalen could have stopped his man from scoring a touchdown, but I would like to see him put his pads on him right at the goal line, and he just chose not to. Like, he's already in, or he's close, he's about to be in. He's probably going to score anyway, but I would like to see Jalen put his pads on him. But I don't think he's quitting. I don't think Cole's quitting, and I just think Montez is just really, really banged up. I don't really get that sense from these guys that they are, just going to fold it in and call it quits. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, like, "Oh, you think you're going to start seeing, guys like Keenan not suit up and not play, or Kevin Byard, or any of these guys?" It's like, no, Montez Sweat. I mean, no, I think they're going to suit up as long as they're able to get out there and go. So I wouldn't put that on their jacket. I don't really believe that about the players in their locker room.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you too, Herb. I think that there was a lot of talk before the season even started that Andrew Billings was kind of one of those unsung heroes kind of thing where, if something were to happen to him, it's really going to affect the team. And sure as shit, here we are. We're not stopping the run anywhere near as well as we did when he was in there. So I totally agree with you on that. So here's one more question in response. MC Fact wants to know about the expectations for the upcoming Monday night game. How do you think that the team will respond? This is kind of what I want to know as far as their performance last week and going into this week.
Yeah, I think that'll go a long way towards answering that last question about whether or not they quit. I mean, that Viking Stadium is the toughest stadium, as tough a stadium as you got to go into to play.
I hate hearing those horns go off. Damn horns are about the most annoying thing in the world.
No, it's bad. It's bad. And then they get the banging on that drum, and it's just loud. Like, they designed that stadium so well. Like, the acoustics, the sound. It's my favorite stadium in the league. I love going to US Bank. That being said, the Bears were able to move the ball against Brian Flores' defense when they came into Soldier Field a couple weeks ago. So can they do that again? Hopefully. Right, I think they should be able to. They got to stay ahead of the chains, because not only you're dealing with Brian Flores' exotic pressure looks, but you're dealing with that noise, and you're dealing with it's Monday Night Football, and it's like all of that is on you, and you got to stay ahead of the chains. You got to do what you can to keep that crowd as tame as possible, because they get the feeling themselves. They get extremely loud. They get to going skull on you, and you start seeing all this crap, and it's like, yo, it's too loud to talk in here, right? I usually sit next to Nick Moriano at the games, and I can't talk to him next to me at that game. They get to popping these pyrotechnics, pop. It's like, yo, that place is electric. So I think they'll play well. I think they'll bounce back in terms of effort. Can they win? I don't know, because if you can't stop the run, now you're talking about trying to deal with Justin Jefferson without dropping 7 in the coverage. Mm-hmm. Now you got a problem, because you got him and you got Jordan Addison. And you got it's just there's just a lot to deal with on that team. And Kevin O'Connell was cooking, and it could get ugly. The Bears are going to have to be able to establish the run. They got to stay away. They got to stay ahead of the chains. They have to play time of possession, field position football. If they want to be successful. And so if they can do those things, cool. If not, this thing can get ugly, but I think they'll play well. I think they'll keep this a game into the fourth quarter, and then we'll get an opportunity to see what Coach Brown looks like in terms of games management, game decisions in certain situations.
Yeah, I think it's funny too, because, with this, as bad as they've been against stop and run lately, not, the Aaron Jones has always been a Bears killer, and it's, let's just kind of hope he doesn't, do it again this weekend. But man, does he have a propensity to beat up on the Bears?
I mean, they held Justin Jefferson in check last time. He didn't really get anything going until late overtime. Like, they held him in check, and so hopefully they can devise a game plan that can do that again. And obviously that was with Flus, and we know that he's been a net positive for them on the defense. And so last week was not a good showing for the defense, and whether you want to put all of that on Coach Washington or not, it happened. And you got to see how they bounce back.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to see how they play for sure. hopefully they, like you said, hopefully they turn around and at least play a little bit better. I'd like to see how Thomas Brown finishes the season. So,
Me too.
but in any case, Herb, we kept you a little longer than we anticipated keeping you for, but we do appreciate
Time
you being
flies
on
when
here
you're
with
having
us.
fun, man.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nah, man. Thank y'all so much for having me, man. I'm a fan of the show. I love the name of the show. Like, I love the name.
Well, go ahead.
I'm very much a Sears Tower dude. Like, I haven't once called that place the Willis Tower.
You don't have to.
But
No.
I do love the name of the show. And shout out to Aldo, man. He's been somebody I've appreciated in this Bears universe for a long time. And we've been cool out here in these Bears Twitter streets for a minute, just sharing our opinions back and forth about how we feel about the team and how we feel about the game and different philosophies, and just having reasonable conversations based on facts, information, understanding. And y'all are exactly the same, man. So I'm grateful to be back on. I really, really appreciate it.
And we have definitely appreciate you coming back on. And yes, Aldo is definitely the pod father. He's the man. We love Aldo here.
No doubt.
He makes a joke here that we're only 5 feet tall, and that kind of is the premise behind the name of the show. Is Tim and I, neither one of us are tall. I'm like 5'9", and Tim is like 5'8". So I mean, we're not
that's like average height, man. I thought y'all was really short, like he was saying. Like,
no,
we're not that short. We're pretty short,
but it's still not we're not towers by any stretch. So it's kind of a play on words.
That's funny.
More or less.
We're not Robinson and Duncan here, but we are.
Right.
No.
Wait a minute. It's better to market the show if they're 5 feet tall. So let's keep it at 5 feet tall.
That's funny. Well, in any case, like I said, we really appreciate you being Herb. It was a great show tonight. And before we let you go, just if you don't mind letting everybody know where they can find all your work at and where they can follow you on X, and we'll close the show out.
Not for sure, man. Y'all can follow me on Twitter, on X at Herb Howard 411. You can follow my work at It's the Bigs. We just did this afternoon did a one-on-one with DJ Moore, so look out for that. That'll be out soon. I appreciate being here on the show, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Thanks for all the questions and comments. Truly appreciate everybody, man. We got 4 more weeks left here in this season. Let's get through it. Let's bear down and see how things go in the offseason.
Absolutely. And hopefully you'll be willing to come back on again in the future with us here, Herb.
Just hit me, man. I'm glad it worked out for sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Like I said, guys, we got to get out of here. So please do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find us all here at Barroom Network, at _ Jeff Willis, at Tim Willis 24. And until next time, we'll see you guys next week. Let's bear down.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.